Can you believe it? It's been 3 months almost since I tried to read this stupid book with my stupid cat. I don't even know what else to say. I mean, this book is awful. Let's do it. Are you ready? I am ready. Get the glasses on. Let's go. Here we go. Chapter 8, Land Straight. Maybe my plan wasn't exactly the best plan in the world. Maybe the whole idea was stupid. You can bet I had plenty of doubts racing through my mind as I heard Mr. Mortman return to the main reading room. My plan, of course, was to prove to myself that I was right, that he was a monster, and then run out to the library. The plan wasn't to be locked in this dark, creepy building with him, unable to escape, but here I was. So far it was okay. He had no idea that anyone else was in here with him, no idea that he was being spied upon. Pressed against the tall shelves, I crept along the narrow aisle until I was as close as I dared to go. I could see his entire desk caught in a deep orange rectangle of light from the high window. It's actually hard to read these things. Alright. Mr. Mortman stepped behind his desk, humming softly to himself. He straightened a stack of books, then shoved it to the corner of his desk. He pulled open his desk drawer, and he shuffled things around, searching for something in there. I crept a little closer. I could see very clearly now. The afternoon sunlight made everything orangey red. Actually says orangey red. Mr. Mortman tugged at his neck of his turtleneck in his neck. He rolled some pencils off the desktop onto the desk drawer. Then he shut the drawer. This is boring, I thought. I agree. It is. This is very boring and normal. I must have been wrong last week. I must have imagined the whole thing. Mr. Mortman is just a funny little man. He isn't a monster at all. I sank against the tall shelf, disappointed. I wasted all this time hiding on that filthy shelf for nothing. And now here I was, locked in the library after closing time, watching the librarian clean off his desk. What a thrill! I've got to get out of here, I thought. I've been really stupid. But then I saw Mr. Mortman reach in for the fly jar on the shelf behind him. I swallowed hard. My heart gave a sudden lurch. A smile crossed Mr. Mortman's pudgy face as he set the big glass jar down in front of him. Then he reached across his desk and with both hands pulled the rectangular turtle pan closer. "Dinner time, my timid friends," he said in his high, scratchy voice. He grinned down at the turtles. He reached into the pan and splashed a little bit of water. "Dinner time, friends," he repeated. And then I stared without blinking, stared with my jaw dropping lower and lower in disbelief. His face began to change again. His round head began to swell up. His black eyes bulged. His mouth grew until it became an open black pit. The enormous head bobbed above the yellow turtleneck. The eyes swam in front of the head. The mouth twisted, opening and closing like an enormous fish mouth. I was right! I realized. Mr. Mortman is a monster! That's new. I knew I was right, but no one would believe me. They'll have to believe me now, I told myself. I'm seeing this so clearly. It was so bright in the red-orange light. Right, Snake? Snake, give me your dims. I'm seeing it. I'm not imagining it. They'll have to believe me now. And I gasped open mouth at the gross creature the librarian has become. He reached into the fly jar, removed a handful of flies, and shoved them hungrily into his mouth. Oh. Dinner time, he rasped, talking as he chewed. I could hear the buzz of flies inside the jar. They were alive flies. The flies were alive, and he was gobbling them up as if they were candy. I raised my hand and pressed them against the side of my face as I stared. Dinner time! Another handful of flies. Some of them had escaped. They buzzed loudly around his swollen, bobbing head, and he chewed and swallowed. Mr. Mortman grabbed at the flies in the jar, his tiny hand surprisingly quick. He pulled flies out of the jar, one, another. He popped them into his enormous gorge of a mouth. Mr. Mortman's eyes swam out in front of his face. For a short, terrifying moment, his eyes stopped. They were staring right at me. I realized I had leaned too far into the aisle. Had he spotted me? I jumped back with a gasp of panic. The bulging black eyes, like undiluted toadstools, remained in the place for another second or two. They continued rolling and swimming about. After a third handful of flies, Mr. Mortman closed the jar, licking his black lips with a snake-like, pencil-thin tongue. Yes, pencil-thin tongue. The buzzing stopped. The room was silent again, except for the ticking clock and my thundering heartbeat. Now what? I thought. Is that it? No! Dinner time, my timid friends, the librarian said in a thin, trembling voice, the voice seeming like to bob along his enormous head. He reached a hand into the pan and picked up one of the little green-shelled turtles. I could see the turtle's legs racing. Is he going to feed some flies to the turtles now, I wondered? Mr. Mortman held the turtle higher, studying it with his bulging, rolling eyes. He held it up to the sunlight. The turtle's legs continued to move. Then he popped the turtle into his mouth. My cat is terrified of this. I heard the crack of the shell as Mr. Mortman bit down. He chewed noisily several times, making a loud crunch with each chew. Then I saw him swallow once, twice, till he got it all down. I'd seen enough. More than enough. I turned away. I began to make my way blindly back through the dark aisle. I jogged quickly. I didn't really care if he heard me or not. I had just had to get out of there, out into the sunlight and fresh air. Away from the crunching sound that kept repeating in my ears, the crunch of the turtle shell as Mr. Mortman chewed it alive. I ran from the main reading room, my heart thudding, my legs feeling heavy as stone. I was grasping for breath when I reached to the front entry. I ran to the door and grabbed the handle and then remembered. Shut up, dude. She remembers. The door was locked. I couldn't get out. I was locked in. And then, as I stood staring straight ahead at the closed door, my hand gripping the brass knob, I heard footsteps behind me. Rapid footsteps. Mr. Mortman had heard me. I was trapped. Dude, Something actually happened? Wow. That was the most interesting thing I had ever seen in this book, in my mind, when I read it aloud to you. Ah. So he's a turtle, cannibalistic turtle monster freak librarian. Oh, that's crazy times. Hmm. I should do these more often. I'm about halfway through the book now. There's 150 pages. I think I just got to 57. Holy crap. I'm not. Oh, there's 130 pages and I'm at 57. So almost halfway. Sorta. Should do this more often. I said it every time and I probably won't. Till next time. Mwah!